What if the universe is not happening to you, but responding to you, right now? As you sit in this room, watching this video, millions of invisible possibilities may already exist around you. Different futures, different outcomes, different versions of your life waiting silently in the dark like an open doors. But according to one of the strangest discoveries in quantum physics, the moment you observe something, it changes. Not metaphorically, not spiritually. Physically. An electron behaves differently the instant it is being watched. A wave becomes a particle the moment observation enters the experiment. So here is the terrifying question one asks often enough. If observation can alter the behavior of particles, what happens when consciousness observes reality itself? And an even deeper question, what if you have been shaping your reality every single day without realizing it? Tonight, we are going beyond theory, beyond motivation, beyond self-help, because this is not about positive thinking. This is about the possibility that consciousness itself may be part of the mechanism that gives reality its final form. And if that is true, then your attention may be the most powerful force in your entire life. Welcome to PsyBeyond. Imagine walking into a dark room. Inside that room are thousands of objects, but you cannot see any of them yet. The moment you shine a flashlight in one direction, part of the room suddenly becomes real to your senses. In many ways, quantum physics describes reality in a strangely similar manner. Before observation, particles exist in what scientists call a probability wave, a cloud of possible states. They are not fully here in the way we normally imagine physical matter, but once measured or observed, the possibilities collapse into one outcome. This phenomenon became famous through the Double Slit Experiment. At first, scientists believed electrons behaved like tiny particles, but when electrons were fired through two slits without observation, they behaved like waves, creating interference patterns as if each electron somehow passed through both slits simultaneously. But the moment researchers attempted to observe which slit the electron traveled through, everything changed. The wave behavior disappeared. The electron suddenly acted like a particle. As though the act of observation itself forced reality to choose. Even today, physicists still debate what this truly means. Some interpretations suggest consciousness plays no role. Others believe information itself changes the outcome. But regardless of interpretation, one truth remains undeniable. Observation changes behavior at the quantum level. And that single fact opened one of the most dangerous philosophical doors in human history, because humans are not passive observers, we are conscious observers, and consciousness does not merely look at reality. It interprets reality, focuses on reality, emotionally charges reality, assigns meaning to reality. So what happens when a conscious being repeatedly directs emotional attention towards something? Fear, failure, opportunity, success, love, chaos. Could observation itself begin organizing experience? To understand this, we need to move from quantum physics into neuroscience. Inside your brain exists a network called the reticular activating system, the RAS. This system acts like a filter between your conscious mind and the overwhelming amount of information entering your senses every second. Because the truth is, your brain cannot process everything. At this very moment, you can feel your clothes touching your skin, hear distant sounds in the background, sense the temperature around you, notice tiny movements in peripheral vision. But most of this information disappears from conscious awareness instantly. Why? Because your brain filters reality according to what it believes matters. And this is where things become deeply unsettling. The human mind does not simply experience reality objectively. It selects reality. Think about the last time you became obsessed with something, a specific car, a phrase, a color, a fear. Suddenly you began seeing it everywhere, not because it magically appeared, but because your awareness tuned itself toward that pattern. Reality did not entirely change, but your experienced reality did. Now imagine this process amplified emotionally over months or years. A person convinced life is against them begins unconsciously filtering reality for evidence of failure. Another person convinced opportunities exist begins noticing doors others ignore. One person enters a room expecting rejection. Another enters expecting possibility. Both people may be standing in the same physical environment, yet psychologically they inhabit completely different realities. And this raises a chilling possibility. Perhaps consciousness is not merely witnessing life. Perhaps it is participating in the selection of outcomes. Psychology has already demonstrated something shockingly close to this. It is called the Pygmalion effect. In one famous experiment, teachers were told certain students possessed unusually high intellectual potential. In reality, the students were randomly selected, but over time, those students began performing better academically. Why? Because the expectations of the teachers subtly altered behavior. More encouragement, more patience, more engagement, more opportunities. The observation change the outcome. Another example here, the placebo effect. A patient receives a sugar pill believing it is medicine, and somehow the body begins healing. Pain decreases, symptoms improve, recovery accelerates. Not because the pill contained chemical power, but because belief altered biology. Then comes the darker twin of placebo, the nocebo effect. When people believe something harmful will happen, their bodies can physically produce negative symptoms, even when no physical danger exists. The mind observes danger, and the body responds as though the danger is real. Now pause for a moment and think carefully. If belief can alter hormone levels, immune responses, emotional states, pain perception, performance, memory, and decision-making, then consciousness is already changing physical reality inside the human body every single day. And suddenly the line between psychology and physics begins to blur. Most people think reality creates thoughts, but what if thoughts also influence the reality we experience? Not by magic, not by fantasy, but through attention, expectation, emotional energy, behavior, perception, and decision-making. Because your mind is not separate from reality, your mind is embedded within it. Imagine two people entering the exact same year of life. One constantly observes evidence of collapse, economic fear, betrayal, hopelessness, limitation. The other observes possibility, learning, adaptation, growth, hidden opportunity. Over time, their choices diverge. Their emotional states diverge. Their actions diverge. Their relationships diverge. Eventually, their realities diverge. The external world did not fully create the difference. The observer participated in shaping the path. And maybe this is why ancient philosophies repeatedly described consciousness as creative force. In Buddhism, awareness transforms suffering. In Hermetic philosophy, the universe is described as mental in nature. In modern neuroscience, repeated attention physically rewires the brain through neuroplasticity. And in quantum theory, observation alters measurable outcomes. Different disciplines, different languages, yet all strangely orbiting the same terrifying possibility. Reality may not be fully fixed before consciousness encounters it. Think back to a moment when your entire life shifted. Not externally. Internally. Maybe it was after heartbreak, after loss, after awakening, after humiliation, after discovering a truth you could no longer ignore. And suddenly the world looked different. The same streets, the same people, the same city, but reality itself felt altered. Why? Because the observer changed. Most people spend their lives trying to control external conditions while ignoring the mechanism through which reality is actually experienced, consciousness itself. And that may be the greatest illusion of all, because your focus is never neutral. Every day, your awareness silently votes for which version of reality becomes psychologically dominant. Every fear observed repeatedly grows stronger. Every possibility emotionally reinforced gains psychological momentum. Every identity constantly rehearsed becomes easier for the brain to maintain. You are not merely reacting to reality, you are continuously stabilizing it through observation. And The universe may be far more all-responsive to consciousness than we dare admit, but this leads to an even stranger question. If your observation shapes your personal reality, then what happens when millions of minds observe the same fears together? What happens when entire societies focus on panic, scarcity, conflict, division? Can collective consciousness influence the emotional structure of civilization itself? And more importantly, can you escape the reality other minds are trying to project onto you? We are going deeper into the hidden connection between consciousness, attention, collective thought, and the architecture of human reality. Every human being carries an invisible field of attention. You cannot see it, you cannot touch it, but you feel it constantly. Walk into a room after two people have argued violently, and even without hearing a single word, something feels heavy, dense, uncomfortable. Walk into another room filled with laughter, trust, and warmth, and your nervous system relaxes almost instantly. Science may explain part of this through mirror neurons, emotional contagion, hormonal responses, and subconscious pattern recognition. But ancient traditions believe something deeper was happening. For thousands of years, civilizations across the world described reality as interconnected through invisible energetic or psychological networks. Collective consciousness, morphic resonance, the noosphere, egregores, unified mind, different names, different cultures, yet all pointing toward the same unsettling possibility. Human consciousness may not be completely isolated. And if consciousness is interconnected, then thoughts may not remain trapped inside individual skulls the way modern culture assumes. Most people underestimate how much of their identity was constructed by observation from others. Before you even understood language, people were already projecting expectations onto you. You're smart, you're difficult, you're shy, you're weak, you're gifted, you'll never succeed. And over time, repeated observation becomes psychological architecture. The brain adapts to the identity it is most consistently exposed to. This is why environments matter so much. Some people spend years trying to heal themselves while remaining surrounded by observers who are emotionally invested in their old identity. And this creates an invisible prison, because human beings unconsciously stabilize each other's personalities. Families do it, friends do it, societies do it. The moment someone begins changing dramatically, the collective system often resists. Have you ever noticed this? The second someone becomes healthier, gains confidence, pursues a dream, changes beliefs, leaves toxic patterns, suddenly people around them become uncomfortable. Why? Because transformation threatens established psychological equilibrium. The group unconsciously wants reality to remain familiar. And this may explain why breaking old identities feels psychologically painful. You are not only fighting your old self, you are fighting the collective expectations surrounding you. Now let us take this idea further. In quantum experiments, observation appears linked to measurable change. In psychology, expectation alters human behavior. In society, collective belief shapes institutions, markets, trends, fear cycles, and cultural narratives. So what happens when millions of observers emotionally focus on the same thing simultaneously? Entire economies collapse from fear. Mass panic spreads faster than logic. Collective hope creates revolutions. Shared belief systems construct civilizations. Human reality has always been partially psychological. Money only works because billions collectively believe in it. Governments function because populations collectively accept symbolic authority. Social status exists because minds agree to perceive it as real. The structures shaping human civilization are not entirely physical. They are stabilized through collective observation. And once you understand this, the modern world begins looking very different. New systems compete for attention because attention itself is power. Algorithms fight to control observation because repeated observation shapes emotion, identity, and behavior. The human nervous system is constantly being programmed through what it repeatedly witnesses. Fear observed daily becomes internal reality. Chaos observed constantly becomes emotional expectation. Scarcity repeated endlessly becomes psychological atmosphere. And slowly, people begin unconsciously constructing lives that mirror the emotional frequency they consume. Not because the universe is magical, but because consciousness adapts to repeated observation. This is why attention may be the most valuable resource on earth. Your attention determines what grows in your mind, what emotions dominate your nervous system, what patterns your brain strengthens, what future possibilities become psychologically visible. Modern civilization understands this better than most people realize. Entire industries exist to capture observation. Social media, advertising, breaking news, political outrage, fear cycles. Why? Because repeated observation creates psychological reality. The more you watch something, the more emotionally real it becomes, and the brain does not sharply distinguish between imagined danger and physical danger. That is why a horror movie can increase heart rate. Why anxiety can produce physical symptoms, why chronic stress weakens immunity. The observer changes the biology of the observed body. Now imagine what happens after years of doom scrolling, outrage cycles, fear-based media, comparison, digital overstimulation. People begin existing inside realities built from repeated emotional observation. And eventually, they mistake those emotional realities for objective truth. This is where many people lose control of their lives. Without realizing it, they unknowingly surrender authorship of consciousness. Biologist Rupert Sheldrake proposed one of the most controversial ideas in modern science, morphic resonance. His theory suggested that patterns in nature may be influenced by invisible informational fields created through repetition. The idea remains highly debated and widely criticized by mainstream science, but philosophically, it raises a fascinating question. Could repeated human thought strengthen collective behavioral patterns over time? Consider how quickly emotional states spread through groups. Fear spreads, violence spreads, optimism spreads, creativity spreads. One emotionally charged mind affects another, then another, then another. Soon entire populations synchronize emotionally. History is filled with examples: economic bubbles, mass hysteria, ideological extremism, social revolutions, spiritual awakenings. Human beings constantly influence each other's perception of reality, and perhaps this is why protecting consciousness matters so deeply, because if you do not consciously choose your observations, someone else will choose them for you. Have you ever entered a city and instantly felt drained, or walked through a forest and felt strangely clear-minded? Places carry psychological residue, not mystical in the fantasy sense, but emotional, sensory, symbolic, behavioral residue accumulated through human experience. Some environments continuously reinforce stress, noise, speed, aggression, overstimulation, competition. Others reinforce presence, silence, nature, rhythm, stillness. Spacious. Your nervous system absorbs patterns from environments constantly. This means reality is not only shaped internally, it is co-created between consciousness, environment, attention, emotional repetition, and collective human behavior. And suddenly, protecting your energy sounds less irrational than people assume, because your mind is continuously adapting to whatever it repeatedly observes. Here is one behavior modern society encourages constantly that may quietly destroy human potential. Overexposure. Most people talk too early, reveal goals too early, seek validation too early. And every external opinion begins interfering with the fragile psychological structure of possibility. Have you noticed how some dreams feel powerful in silence, but weaker after being exposed to criticism, doubt, or mockery? This is not necessarily supernatural. It is neurological and psychological. External observation alters emotional momentum. Suddenly uncertainty appears. Self-consciousness increases. Identity destabilizes. The observer effect enters consciousness itself. This may be why so many visionary individuals protected ideas in silence during early stages of creation, because possibility is delicate before it stabilizes, and the collective mind often crushed emerging realities before they fully form. So how do you reclaim your consciousness? First, you must understand something critical. Not every thought inside your mind truly belongs to you. Some are inherited, some are conditioned, some are socially programmed, some are emotionally absorbed from environments around you. Most people never question the origin of their inner voice. But freedom begins the moment observation turns inward. The moment you stop identifying with every thought automatically, something changes. You begin becoming the observer instead of the reaction. And this shift may be one of the most powerful transformations possible for a human being, because awareness breaks unconscious programming. The instant you consciously witness fear without immediately obeying it, you weaken its control. The instant you observe destructive thought patterns without feeding them, their momentum begins collapsing. This is why meditation has such profound neurological effects. It trains consciousness to observe without immediate identification. And maybe that is the true hidden power of awareness, not controlling reality directly, but reclaiming authority over the mechanism through which reality is experienced. But now we arrive at the most important question of all. If observation influences reality, how can you consciously use this principle in daily life? Can attention become a practical tool for transforming your future? Can awareness alter the emotional structure of your existence? And most importantly, what happens when you finally stop observing yourself through fear? We are going into the practical psychological techniques that may allow you to reshape the reality you experience by changing the observer within. There is something strange about human attention. Whatever you continuously observe begins to grow, not because of magic, not because the universe is granting wishes, like some cosmic vending machine, but because attention changes behavior, attention changes perception, and perception changes reality. Think about fear. The more a person watches for danger, the more danger they begin to see. A harmless comment suddenly feels hostile. A delay feels like rejection. Silence feels threatening. The world itself appears to transform. But did reality actually change? Or did observation reorganize the observer's world? This is where the line between psychology and physics becomes deeply unsettling, because the universe you experience is not raw reality. It is filtered, reality, constructed reality. Reality assembled through observation. Your brain receives millions of bits of information every second, yet consciously processes only a tiny fraction of it, which means something extraordinary is happening at all times. Most of reality is being ignored. And what you choose to observe determines which version of reality becomes emotionally real to you. This is why two people can live in the same city, work similar jobs, experience similar circumstances, yet inhabit completely different psychological universes. One sees opportunity everywhere. The other sees limitation everywhere. One sees meaning, the other sees chaos. One sees connection, the other sees isolation. The external world may be similar, but the observed world is different, and the observed world becomes the lived world. In quantum mechanics, particles exist in probability states until observation forces a measurable outcome. Again, this does not mean consciousness magically creates planets or controls physics with thoughts alone, but it does suggest something deeply important. Observation influences outcomes. Now translate that into human experience. Imagine a person who constantly tells themselves, "Nothing ever works for me." At first, it seems like just a thought, but over time, that thought changes behavior. They stop taking risks. They hesitate during opportunities. They interpret neutral events negatively. They unconsciously expect failure. And because expectation changes behavior, behavior changes outcomes. Eventually, their reality begins reflecting the observation they repeated internally for years. Not because the universe cursed them, but because observation shaped action, action shaped patterns, patterns shaped life. Now, reverse it. Imagine someone who trains themselves to observe possibilities instead of limitations. They notice opportunities others miss. They speak differently. Walk differently, react differently, persist longer, recover faster. And slowly, reality begins responding differently. To them, the external world did not magically transform overnight, but their relationship with possibility changed. And that changed everything. Perhaps this is the hidden bridge between consciousness and reality. Observation directs energy. Energy directs behavior. Behavior directs outcomes. And outcomes reinforce observation. A loop, a self-constructing reality loop. But there is an even deeper layer. Inside you exists something strange, a presence that can watch your thoughts. Think about that carefully. If you can observe your fear, then you are not the fear. If you can observe anxiety, then anxiety is not your deepest identity. If you can observe anger, then anger is not the core self. There is an observer behind the emotion, a silent awareness, a witnessing intelligence. Ancient traditions spoke about this for thousands of years. Buddhist philosophy called it pure awareness. Mystics described it as the watcher. Modern psychology sometimes refers to it as meta-awareness. And neuroscience increasingly studies the effects of detached self-observation on emotional regulation. But regardless of terminology, the experience is universal. You have felt it before. Moments where you suddenly become aware of your own thinking. Moments where you step outside emotional chaos and simply notice it happening. That moment changes everything, because unconscious patterns lose power once observed consciously. This is why awareness itself is transformative. The moment you observe a destructive pattern clearly, you begin weakening its control over you. The moment you observe self-sabotage, you interrupt automation. The moment you observe fear, fear stops operating invisibly. Observation introduces consciousness into systems that once ran automatically. And consciousness changes systems. People often imagine awakening as some mystical explosion of cosmic knowledge, but sometimes awakening is far simpler and far more uncomfortable. Awakening is noticing how much of your life has been unconsciously programmed, noticing how many beliefs were inherited from parents, schools, society, trauma, culture, and fear, noticing how many decisions were reactions instead of conscious choices, noticing how often you became the person other people expected you to be. This is why observation is powerful, because what remains unconscious controls you, but what becomes conscious can be changed. Imagine walking through life asleep inside invisible scripts. Then suddenly, you see the script. At that moment, reality begins shifting. Not instantly, not magically, but fundamentally. Because now there is space between you and the pattern, and inside that space exists freedom. Now zoom outward again, because individual observation is only part of the story. Human civilization itself is built from shared observation. Money has value because billions observe it as valuable. Reputation exists because groups collectively observe. Identities, social norms survive because people continuously reinforce them through attention. Entire systems operate because humans agree to perceive them as real. Civilization is, in many ways, a mass consensus hallucination stabilized through collective observation. And once you realize this, society starts looking very different. Trends spread because attention spreads. Fear spreads because observation spreads. Panic spreads because focus spreads. Entire populations can emotionally synchronize around narratives. This is why media influences reality so powerfully. What society repeatedly watches becomes psychologically dominant. When millions focus on outrage, fear, division, and catastrophe every day, human consciousness slowly reshapes itself around those frequencies. Attention becomes collective architecture. This does not mean ignoring problems, but it does mean understanding that observation is not passive. Attention feeds systems. Focus strengthens patterns, observation amplifies realities, and perhaps one of the most revolutionary acts in modern life is consciously choosing what deserves your attention. Tonight, before you sleep, try something simple. Observe your thoughts without fighting them. Do not suppress them. Do not judge them. Just watch. Watch how thoughts appear automatically. Watch how emotions rise and fall. Watch how memories emerge from nowhere. Watch how your mind constantly attempts to pull you into unconscious reactions, and then notice something extraordinary. There is a part of you untouched by the chaos, a quiet observer. Still. Aware. Present. The more you strengthen this observer, the less reality controls you automatically, because unconscious people are constantly manipulated by external observation. Advertisements shape them, social expectations shape them, fear shapes them, algorithms shape them, but conscious observation interrupts programming. And when you stop reacting automatically, you begin choosing deliberately. That is real power. Now we arrive at the deepest question of all. Why does observation matter so much in the first place? Why does consciousness exist at all? Some physicists have proposed participatory models of reality, where observers play a fundamental role in how the universe manifests measurable states. Philosopher John Wheeler once asked a haunting question: is the universe somehow brought into being through observation? No one knows the final answer, but the implications are staggering, because it suggests consciousness may not be a meaningless accident. It may be part of reality itself. Perhaps the universe is not a dead machine. Perhaps it is a process becoming aware of itself. And through human consciousness, the cosmos observes its own existence. Think about what that means. The atoms in your brain were forged inside ancient stars. The universe turned itself into neurons, into perception, into awareness, into you. And now, through your eyes, the cosmos is looking back at itself, not metaphorically. Literally. You are made of the same matter as galaxies, the same physics. The same energy, the same cosmic history. The universe spent billions of years evolving into something capable of observation. Into something capable of wonder. Into something capable of asking, what is all this? And perhaps that question itself is sacred. So where does this leave us? It leaves us with responsibility. Because if observation shapes experience, then where you place your attention matters profoundly. The realities you emotionally rehearse matter. The identities you reinforce matter. The fears you continuously observe matter. And the possibilities you nurture matter too. You may not control everything. No honest person can promise that life contains randomness, pain, unpredictability, and forces beyond human understanding. But within that uncertainty, your awareness still matters, your focus still matters, your interpretation still matters, and the observer within you may be far more powerful than you realize. Maybe changing your life does not begin by controlling the universe. Maybe it begins by observing differently, observing consciously, observing deliberately, observing without surrendering your awareness to fear. Because the moment you become aware of how you observe reality, you begin changing your relationship with reality itself. So tonight, ask yourself something honestly. What kind of world have you been unconsciously observing into existence? A world of fear, a world of limitation, a world of hopelessness, or a world still filled with unseen possibilities waiting for conscious attention? because perhaps the greatest secret hidden inside quantum physics, inside psychology, inside consciousness itself, is this: the universe is not only happening around you. It is also happening through you. And every moment you are alive, reality is waiting to see what you choose to observe next. What reality will you strengthen with your attention? If this video changed the way you see reality, subscribe to PsyBeyond and join us for the next exploration beyond the limits of the mind.